Reverence for life. Aware of the suffering caused by the destruction of life, I am committed to cultivating the insight of interbeing and compassion and learning ways to protect the lives of people, animals, plants, and minerals. I am determined not to kill, not to let others kill, and not to support any act of killing in the world, in my thinking, or in my way of life. Seeing that harmful actions arise from anger, fear, greed, and intolerance, which in turn comes from dualistic, discriminative thinking, I will cultivate openness, non-discrimination, and non-attachment to views in order to transform violence, fanaticism, and dogmatism in myself and in the world. True happiness. Aware of the suffering caused by exploitation, social injustice, stealing, and oppression, I am committed to practicing generosity in my thinking, speaking, and acting. I am determined not to steal and not to possess anything that should belong to others, and I will share my time, energy, and material resources with those who are in need. I will practice looking deeply to see that the happiness and suffering of others are not separate from my own happiness and suffering, that true happiness is not possible without understanding and compassion, and the running after wealth, fame, power, and sensual pleasures can bring much suffering and despair. I am aware that happiness depends on my mental attitude and not on external conditions, that I can live happily in the present moment simply by remembering that I already have more than enough conditions to be happy. I am committed to practicing right livelihood so that I can help reduce the suffering of living beings on earth and stop contributing to climate change. True love. Aware of the suffering caused by sexual misconduct, I am committed to cultivating responsibility and learning ways to protect the safety and integrity of individuals, couples, families, and society. Knowing that sexual desire is not love, and that sexual activity motivated by craving harms myself as well as others. I am determined not to engage in sexual relations without true love and a deep long-term commitment made known to my family and friends. I will do everything in my power to protect children from sexual abuse and prevent couples and families from being broken by sexual misconduct. Seeing that body and mind are one, I am committed to learning appropriate ways to take care of my sexual energy and cultivating loving kindness, compassion, joy, and inclusiveness, which are the four basic elements of true love. For my great happiness and the greater happiness of others, practicing true love, we know that we continue beautifully into the future. Loving speech and deep listening. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful speech and the inability to listen to others, I am committed to cultivating loving speech and compassionate listening in order to relieve suffering and to promote reconciliation and peace in myself and among other people, ethnic and religious groups, the nations. Knowing that words can create happiness or suffering, I am committed to speaking truthfully, using words that inspire confidence, joy, and hope. When anger is manifesting in me, I am determined not to speak. I will practice mindful breathing and walking in order to recognize and look deeply into my anger. I know that the roots of anger can be found in my wrong perceptions, the lack of understanding of the suffering in myself and the other person. I will speak and listen in a way that can help myself and other person to transform suffering and to see a way out of difficult situations. I am determined not to spread news that I do not know to be certain, and not to utter words that can cause division or discord. I will practice right diligence to nourish my capacity for understanding, loving, joy, and inclusiveness, and gradually transform anger, violence, fear, and lie deep in my consciousness. Nourishment and healing. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful consumption, I am committed to cultivating good health, both physical and mental, for myself, my family, and my society. By practicing mindful eating, drinking, and consuming, I will practice looking deeply into how I consume the four kinds of nurturements, namely edible foods, sense impressions, volition, and consciousness. I am determined not to gamble or to use alcohol, drugs, or any other products which contain toxins, such as certain websites, electronic games, TV programs, films, magazines, books, and conversations. I will practice coming back to the present moment to be in touch with the refreshing, healing, and nourishment elements to me and around me, not letting regrets and sorrow drag me back into the past, nor letting anxieties, fear, or craving pull me out of the present moment. I am determined not to try to cover up loneliness, anxiety, or other suffering by losing myself in consumption. I will contemplate interbeing and consume in a way that preserves peace, joy, and well-being in my body, consciousness, in the collective body and consciousness of my family, my society, and the earth.
I'm going to invite our incense lighters to come forward, please. If you look in your chant book, there is a sheet on the inside for the incense offering. Please join me in the incense offering. In gratitude, we offer this incense throughout space and time to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. May it be fragrant as earth herself, reflecting careful efforts, wholehearted awareness, and the fruit of understanding slowly ripening. May we and all beings be companions of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. May we awaken from forgetfulness and realize our true home. Right after reading. Right after reading. Good morning.
Good morning.
Great to see so many people here today to help us celebrate the Preceptor Ordination. Some courtesy announcements. If you have small children, we do have space downstairs where there's like toys and activities. There's bathrooms downstairs, water fountain. We also have bathrooms on the other side of that curtain right there. If you do need to get up during the service to use the bathroom or to go downstairs, we ask you not walk directly in front of the dais, but walk across the back and down. When we do our chants, we invite you to participate as you are comfortable. You will have copies of all the chants in your book. We'll try and tell you what page number they're on, and we'll try and walk you through the service if you haven't been here before as well. And when we're chanting, we just encourage you to chant in an upbeat tempo with a smile on your face, not so loud that you can't hear your neighbor, but not so quiet that you can't hear yourself. Just kind of be mindful of your tone, of your volume, I guess. At this time, I'd like to invite everyone to stand up and greet each other silently with bows if you're comfortable. And then the preceptor, I'd like you to go ahead and gather yourself downstairs. We'll be doing the Three Refuges chant on page 7 in your chant book. I
Go for refuge to Buddha, my deeply awakened mind, the living source of understanding and compassion, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I go for refuge to Dharma, the path of mindful living, leading to healing, joy, and enlightenment, the way of peace, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I go for refuge to the Sangha, the building and supporting community of practice, realizing harmony, awareness, and liberation, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I am aware that the three jewels are within my heart. I vow to realize them. I vow to understand living beings and their suffering. I vow to cultivate loving kindness and compassion, and to practice joy and equanimity. I vow to live simply and sanely, content with few possessions, and to keep my body healthy. I vow to let go of all worry and anxiety in order to be light and free. I am aware that I owe so much to my parents, teachers, friends, and all beings. I vow to be worthy of their trust, to practice wholeheartedly, so that understanding and compassion will flower, and I can help living beings be free from their suffering. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts. May the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha support my efforts.
Page 8, we'll chant the Heart Sutra together.
Prajna great compassion, from the deep practice of prajna, paramita, perceived the emptiness of all five skandhas, and delivered all beings from their suffering. O Shariputra, form is no other than emptiness, emptiness no other than form, form is emptiness, emptiness form. The same is true of feeling, thought, impulse, and consciousness. O Shariputra, all dharmas are empty. They are not born nor annihilated. They are not defiled nor immaculate. They do not increase nor decrease. So in emptiness, no form, no feeling, no thought, no impulse, no consciousness, no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, no form, sound, smell, taste, touch, or objects of mind, no realm of sight, no realm of consciousness, no ignorance, nor extinction of ignorance, no old age and death, nor extinction of them, no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cease of suffering, no path to the out of suffering, no knowledge, no attainment, no realization, for there is nothing to attain. Bodhisattva holds on to nothing but prajna, paramita. Therefore, the mind is clear of any elusive hindrance. Without hindrance, there is no fear. Away from all perverted views, one reaches final nirvana. All Buddhisms past, present, and future, through faith in prajna, paramita, attain to the highest perfect enlightenment. Know then the prajna, paramita, is the great Dharani, the radiant fearless mantra, the utmost supreme mantra, which is capable of allaying all pain. This is true beyond all doubt. Proclaim now the highest wisdom, the prajna, paramita. Gate, 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 Samgate, Bodhisvaha. Gate, 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 Samgate, Bodhisvaha. Gate, 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 Samgate, Bodhisvaha. Dharma, Prajna, Paramita, Hridaya, Sutra.
Please. Once again, thank you all for joining us today for our preceptor ceremony. To start off the ceremony, each of the Dharma teachers here is going to talk a little bit about one of the precepts. My name is Kunga Nyima. I'm one of the Dharma teachers here. This is Asan Shin and Gaji Su and Nasa Scars, our Dharma student intern, and Shinkyu there at the end. And we are going to start with San Shin introducing the first precept. Oh, sorry.
Thank you all for coming today. I have the first precept, which is the cultivation of life, the preservation of life, the vow not to kill, a little bit more bluntly as well. I've really enjoyed seeing how the preceptors have taken this one in so many different ways, because as you know, it's more than just, don't kill people. The way many of the preceptors have taken this to maybe even be more mindful of their consumption of life as well. I've seen a lot of the preceptors take this in a way that they more gracefully handle their own grief when it comes to dealing with the loss of life through this precept, which has been really beautiful to see. I think the hardest part of this precept that I've seen a lot of the preceptors deal with is how to value their own lives as well when it comes to not, neglecting the lives that they have and they're experiencing, when it comes to helping others as well, and how that's all sort of connected in a way. So I think I've learned a lot from watching you all grow in this one as well. So thank you for that.
Bless you. I have the second precept, which is to respect and protect life. Respect and protect the property of others. So don't steal. Don't take what's not freely given. There's a lot of don'ts in some of these precepts, but one thing I really appreciate about these precepts and the preceptors are looking at the positive side. How to cultivate generosity, how to give. That's also a part of the precept, not just to not do something, but to protect the act of giving and helping. Dana, generosity. So when you think of stealing, you can also take someone's time. You can steal someone's rights away. You can steal other things than just property. It's not just property. And just the discussions we've had over all these precepts and going deeper into it, I think is really important. And it works for all the precepts. They're not black and white. They're gray. They're very it's really about your intention behind them, and I think you guys have followed this precept and been really growing, and you guys are pretty great. So I just wanted to say that. That's the second precept.
So I was going to introduce the third precept. Traditionally, the third precept is do not engage in sexual misconduct. The morning bell chant, for some of you who were here first thing this morning, Thich Nhat Hanh calls that precept true love. And it's a much more inclusive understanding of the precept, not just focusing on what you shouldn't do, engage in sexual misconduct, but also how do you do the opposite? How do you provide or how do you support loving relationships? And so in the True Love commentary by Thich Nhat Hanh, he talks about there will be 4 things that make up true love: loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. And so these are specifically Buddhist terms in a way. I mean, we're not understanding them the way we maybe understand them in normal everyday life. The idea of loving compassion, or loving kindness, is that we're wishing others to have happiness. Just like we wish happiness for ourselves, We want other beings to have happiness. And when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about how do we know, what the happiness is for other people? Well, we have to have communication with them. We have to have a relationship with them. We can't just assume that what makes us happy makes another person happy. So there's that relationship aspect of it. Compassion in this context is a desire to reduce the suffering of others. And the same idea applies. We know what causes suffering for ourselves, but the only way we can know what causes suffering for another being is to have a relationship with them and talk with them and listen to them, which is kind of following in with the some of the other precepts, the loving speech and deep listening precept. The next element that Thich Nhat Hanh says make up true love is this idea of joy, or sympathetic joy, which is sharing in the happiness of others. And so this kind of maybe goes against our inclination, just want to feel happiness for ourselves. And when other people are happy, we want to be like jealous of them, like, oh, why can't that be me? Or they don't deserve that. But instead we're supposed to think about they want happiness just as much as we want happiness, and try to put aside our feelings that we're separate from them and share in the joy that they're having, and not think about whether or not we think they deserve it or not, or we deserve it more. And then the last one is equanimity. So in Buddhist terms, this is a feeling that we can experience life, and in Buddhism we often say like the middle way, kind of at a level where we're not thrown around, like a beach ball in a surf, getting thrown around. If we're experiencing something really good, we're thrown way up in the air. But then, if we experience something bad, we're crashed down into the beach. Equanimity is this idea that we're going to be more kind of calm and collective. We're still going to feel our emotions, but we're not going to be thrown about by them. We're not going to do something crazy just because we're having a good time. And we're also, when we're sad, we don't have to be completely depressed and shut down our whole life and not be able to maintain our relationships. So I really like this concept of true love and Thich Nhat Hanh's version, because it does have focus on this idea of what we should do. And there's a practice in Buddhism called Lojong, which is all about, how do we act in life in ways that are skillful? And it doesn't focus on what's unskillful. It just says, do what's right all the time, and you won't have time to do what's unskillful. So if you're constantly filling your activities up with what you're supposed to do, all the other stuff, all the negative stuff will take care of itself, because it's not happening because you're not doing it. So thank you.
Thank you. As Kunga said, I'm a Dharma teacher intern, so while I get out my notes, I'm gonna need everybody to lower their expectations just a little bit. The fourth precept, I undertake the training to refrain from false or harmful speech. It's easy, yes. Just don't lie. Even if we believe we're a truthful person, when we begin to practice the fourth precept, we look more deeply into ways that we communicate, and we realize it can be more difficult than we first thought. To have a good understanding of false or harmful speech, we first have to ask ourselves, what is speech? Is it body language, rolling our eyes, shaking our head if someone makes a comment? Is it sarcasm, cutting wit, a joke that isn't so nice? Can laughter violate the fourth precept? What if someone else tells a joke and all we do is laugh at it? Is that a violation of the fourth precept? The 8th century Buddhist monk Shantideva says that if we have hate or anger inside of us, do not speak, but like a log of wood, be sure to stay. Be silent. That's a valuable teaching. But what if the intent of the silence is to do harm? I'm mad at this person, and I want them to know about it. My father used silence as a weapon. It's hard to understand that when you're a child. Can silence be harmful speech? My mother always said, if you don't have something nice to say about a person, don't say anything at all. That sounds a lot like be like a log. But when she got mad, she would slam doors so hard that they would break. Is slamming doors harmful speech? Lying, slander, gossip, whether it's true or not. Idle chatter, speech that is divisive or malicious. Damn those Republicans. But is that helpful? How about self-inflation? Exaggeration, lying by omission, pretending to know something that you don't actually know. Exaggeration. Oh, said that one. A lot of these things are governed by intention. So they're tied to the second step on the Eightfold Path, right? Intention. How do I know if I have pure intentions? I like to think that if we're practicing the four immeasurables, as Kunga just outlined them, the fourth precept will take care of itself. Loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. If we use those as our guide, we likely won't be. If I fill myself with compassion, with loving kindness, I likely won't be having time to or remembering to roll my eyes at people, tell bad jokes, slam doors, have angry words. The fourth precept's also closely tied to the third step on the Eightfold Path, right? Speech. When we are about to speak, there are some things we can ask ourselves. Is what I'm about to say true? What is its purpose? Can the truth be harmful? What about lies that are told to prevent harm? If Anne Frank were hiding in your attic and the Nazis came, would you tell them lies so that they wouldn't take her away? That has to do with intent. And in some way, it has karmic consequences. Whichever direction you go, whatever step you make, your karma is yours. Your karmic consequences of your actions are the choice that you have to make in some of these instances. Overall, I would advise against rationalizing lying as beneficial. It's the proverbial slippery slope. Try to stick with the truth at all times. Even when it's difficult, it's generally the better way. So, right speech. Is what I'm about to say true? Number 2, is it healing? What if you work in an office with someone who smells bad? Should you tell them about it? Is that helpful or harmful? Number 3, that brings us to number 3. Can it be said kindly? Loving kindness, again, with the four immeasurables. And is it the right moment? Sometimes it's just not the appropriate time. There's a time to say everything. If what you're about to say doesn't fulfill those 4 requirements, like a log you should be. Remember, it's important to understand the precepts not as rules to be blindly followed, but as guidelines for acting compassionately and cultivating a mind unperturbed by guilt. And for me, again, that goes back to intent. If my intention is to cultivate the 4 immeasurables, then I shouldn't have much to feel guilty about in my speech. Remember that everything you do is like ripples in a pond. Everything that you say, every bit of communication that you have with the world, you're putting ripples out into the pond. And those ripples go out and they're going to touch somebody else. And that person's also going to put their ripples into the pond. They have effect. Your communication has effect. And what effect do you want it to have? Lastly, I guess, and I thought about this just this morning, with my opening words, I broke the 4th precept. I need you all to lower your expectations. I'm just a teacher intern. The speech that we have to ourselves, our inner dialogue, was something I almost forgot all about. It's sometimes the hardest, and it can be the most harmful. If you have an inner dialogue that's harmful to yourself, what is your outer dialogue going to be? So that's all I have.
All right. I have the fifth precept, which is to abstain from alcohol and intoxicants. And one way that my teacher Shuji likes to put it is to not sell the wine of delusion. So just like how Thich Nhat Hanh has a very broad swath or band or idea of what you can consume unskillfully, this way, selling the wine of delusion is also this broad thing. So you can consume alcohol, sure. You can consume politics unskillfully. You can consume your identity unskillfully. You can consume a job unskillfully. You can consume the inner dialogue in your head unskillfully. How I see it, what it comes down to is it's a relationship that we have with our own dukkha, our suffering and our dissatisfaction, the inner sense that things aren't just quite right at any given time. And a lot of times, growing up, you'll learn from either your parents or just you're going to test out these unskillful habits, sometimes skillful habits of how to deal with that dissatisfaction and that suffering you have. And maybe when you're a little child, it works for you, maybe it doesn't. But a lot of times those unskillful habits that we have just stick with us, and then they kind of transmute throughout our life and become even more unskillful. And the strange thing is, a lot of times it doesn't work. You still dig down even deeper and just keep trying the same things. For me, when I was in my 20s, I drank a bit, a lot, hard to say. For me, at the time, it felt great. And now I look back at it and I'm like, yikes, I probably should have found a better way to get out that. For me, it was anxiety that I was dealing with. Unbeknownst to myself, I didn't even know that it was anxiety. I just thought everybody felt that way. Maybe they do. But that was kind of a karmic habit that built up from childhood. I would draw all the time. So for me, I had an unhealthy consumption with drawing, but people like drawing, so it's fun. So it didn't seem like a bad thing. And at the time, I don't think it was. But then you get older, and then you have more issues you have to deal with, bills and children and student loan payments and working your job and all that. And drawing didn't cut it. So then alcohol, that's the thing we're going to drink. And you feel great for like a little bit, and then a little while later, when it goes away, doesn't feel good. So like it could have been anything too. I mean, maybe it could have been watching YouTube like 5 hours a day. Whatever you can do to get away from that dukkha, that dissatisfaction that you feel in everything you do. So this vow really is to not turn away from that dissatisfaction, which is, the normal impulse. Like, ooh, there's a hot stove. You're not going to put your hand on it and then hold it there, be like, this hurts. You're going to stay away from it. And then you're going to tell other people, hey, that stove is hot. So just stay away from it. So kind of have that same relationship with our suffering or dissatisfaction. Stay far, far away from it. Just let it do its own thing. But that typically is an unskillful way to deal with it. The way that, unfortunately, the best way to really deal with it is to look right at it as much as you can. Sometimes it's so overwhelming that it might be a good idea just to step back, look and then step back, look and step back. But really, the practice, as we talk about it in Soto Zen, is to study the self. We say we have no self. So we're studying that thing that we call the self, all these memories and internal reactions and karmic habits and the ways that we deal with our suffering. We look at that and we study it and we see what we do habitually, and we try to just put little new skillful habits in every now and then, and we kind of see them bloom. And I don't really drink anymore. I maybe have 4 drinks a year, and it's really fun when it is. And I remember like how much I really enjoyed it, but it's not the way to deal with our suffering. So I've taken the vow too. So for me, it's really just about looking at the uncomfortable parts of life, looking at the comfortable parts of life, and just being there with them. Thank you.
Okay, for this next part of the ceremony, thank you all Dharma teachers for sharing those different views. So the preceptors had a different experience this year than they normally have. Normally the preceptors will have one Dharma teacher from beginning to end, giving them all their classes, all their lectures, all their feedback on their journals. But we didn't do that this year. We took a team approach, and all the Dharma teachers participated in different ways, teaching them how to be incense lighters and greeters, giving them lectures about Soto Zen and Dharma talks, providing with instruction on prostrations and sitting meditation and walking meditation. So we just provide a variety of different experiences for them. And I think that was good for us because we're pretty much young Dharma teachers. And so our combined wisdom, I think, is better than any one person that's being relied on because, we all have our areas of maybe expertise or professionalism, I guess. So it's a little bit different. So for this next part of the ceremony, I'd like to ask all the preceptors to stand up. What we're going to do is we're going to do some bowing. And in traditional Buddhism, the reason we do bows and prostrations are to show our gratitude or to show our interconnectedness with everything in life, which is a little bit different, I think, than Christian bowing, which is more related to beliefs of God and faith. So if we're thinking about faith, we're thinking about a faith in the teachings. We're thinking about a faith in our community that supports us. We're talking about a faith in the Buddha as a role model and also as an internal element in ourselves that we can realize. Okay? So there are 2 types of things you can do. You can do prostrations, which are all the way going down to the ground, and there are bows just from the waist. And we'll just be doing bows from the waist today. And so I'd like to invite the preceptors to turn around and face their family and friends. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to do 3 bows to your family and friend, just to kind of express the gratitude for their support that they've provided to you during this process. Okay, now stay where you are. We're going to now do a set of 3 bows to the Sangha as a whole, which is our community of practitioners here who come to service on every Sunday or meets with us online and just provides support to each other just by being here with and sharing that energy. So please go ahead and provide bows to the Sangha. And now I would like to ask the preceptors to face each other. We'll just have the preceptors on the right face the preceptors on the left. And what you're going to do is to provide bows to each other for the support that you gave each other through this program. They were meeting every week to help clean the temple, set the temple up. They were having short lectures together. They were, having a chat group, encouraging each other, getting together for potlucks. So really just went all out to support each other. So please show each other gratitude for that. And lastly, to turn here and face the altar. And then we're going to provide 3 bows to the precept masters, but not just us, but also just the teachings and the Buddha that exists within you, sort of all those places that you look for inspiration in your practice. All right, so I want you to remain standing. So for this next section, some of you may have come late, so you may not have heard the precept explanations that were given through the bell chant that we did first thing this morning, in which several of us alluded to during our discussions. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to read each of the 5 precepts and ask the preceptors to accept the gift of these precepts. And they will respond, we accept them after I'm done. So we're going to do that for each one. So I'm going to start with the reverence for life. Aware of the suffering caused by the destruction of life, I am committed to cultivating the insight of inner being and compassion and learning ways to protect the lives of people, animals, plants, and minerals. I am determined not to kill, not to let others kill, and not to support any act of killing in the world, in my thinking, and in my way of life. Seeing that harmful action arise from anger, fear, greed, and intolerance, which in turn come from dualistic and discriminative thinking, I will cultivate openness, non-discrimination, and non-attachment to views in order to transform violence, fanaticism, and dogmatism in myself and in the world. Preceptors, will you accept the gift of these precepts?
Yes.
You? True happiness, second precept. Aware of the suffering caused by exploitation, social injustice, stealing, and oppression, I am committed to practicing generosity in my thinking, speaking, and acting. I am determined not to steal and not to possess anything that should belong to others, and I will share my time, energy, and material resources with those who are in need. I will practice looking deeply to see that the happiness and suffering of others are not separate from my own happiness and suffering, and that true happiness is not possible without understanding and compassion, and that running after wealth, fame, power, and sensual pleasures can bring much suffering and despair. I am aware that happiness depends on my mental attitude and not on external conditions, and I can live happily in the present moment simply by remembering that I already have more than enough conditions to be happy. I am committed to practicing right livelihood so that I can help reduce the suffering of living beings on earth and stop contributing to climate change. Preceptors, will you accept the gift of these precepts?
We accept them.
Third precept, true love. Aware of the suffering caused by sexual misconduct, I am committed to cultivating responsibility and learning ways to protect the safety and integrity of individuals, couples, families, and society. Knowing that sexual desire is not love and that sexual activity motivated by craving always harms myself as well as others, I am determined not to engage in sexual relations without true love and a deep, long-term commitment made known to my family and friends. I will do everything in my power to protect children from sexual abuse and to prevent couples and families from being broken by sexual misconduct. Seeing that body and mind are one, I am committed to learning appropriate ways to take care of my sexual energy and cultivating loving kindness, compassion, joy, and inclusiveness, which are the 4 basic elements of true love, for my greater happiness and the greater happiness of others. Practicing true love, we know that we will continue beautifully into the future. Preceptors, we accept the gift of these precepts.
We accept them.
Thank you. The 4th precept, loving speech and deep listening. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful speech and the inability to listen to others, I am committed to cultivating loving speech and compassionate listening in order to relieve suffering and to promote reconciliation and peace in myself and among other people, ethnic and religious groups, and nations. Knowing that words can create happiness or suffering, I am committed to speaking truthfully, using words that inspire confidence, joy, and hope. When anger is manifesting in me, I am determined not to speak. I will practice mindful breathing and walking in order to recognize and to look deeply into my anger. I know that the roots of anger can be found in my wrong perceptions and lack of understanding of the suffering in myself and in the other person. I will speak and listen in a way that can help myself and the other person to transform suffering and see the way out of difficult situations. I am determined not to spread news that I do not know to be certain and not to utter words that can cause division or discord. I will practice right diligence to nourish my capacity for understanding love, joy, and inclusiveness, and gradually transform anger, violence, and fear that lie deep in my consciousness. Preceptors, we accept the gift of these precepts.
We accept them.
Thank you. The fifth precept, nourishment and healing. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful consumption, I am committed to cultivating good health, both physical and mental, for myself, my family, and my society by practicing mindful eating, drinking, and consuming. I will practice looking deeply into how I consume the four kinds of nutriments, namely edible foods, sense impressions, volition, and consciousness. I am determined not to gamble or to use alcohol, drugs, or any other products which contain toxins, such as certain websites, electronic games, TV programs, films, magazines, books, and conversations. I will practice coming back to the present moment to be in touch with the refreshing, healing, and nourishing elements in me and around me, not letting regret and sorrow drag me back into the past, nor letting anxiety, fear, or craving pull me out of the present moment. I am determined not to try to cover up loneliness, anxiety, or other suffering by losing myself in consumption. I will contemplate inner being and consume in a way that preserves peace, joy, and well-being in my body and consciousness, and in the collective body and consciousness of my family, my society, and the earth. Preceptors, do you accept the gift of this precept?
We accept them.
Thank you. We can have all the preceptors take their cushions again. Thank you very much. So, that's a lot to accept, right? So this is the idea, is that we're aspiring to achieve these things. We may not be able to do all of these things all the time, every day, but when we make a mistake or catch ourselves acting against a precept, then we're just committing ourselves to kind of look at that and try to bring ourselves back and try and do better next time. It's definitely a learning process, not like something like you just turn a switch and all of a sudden you're going to be able to follow all these guidelines, right? So for the next part of the ceremony, we're going to provide each of the preceptors with their Dharma name. So this is a tradition we have in Buddhism, which they also have in other religions, where when someone completes the initial deep study of the practice, then they are provided with a religious name to symbolize that spiritual commitment. So what we've done in the temple here is we've decided to provide Sanskrit names to our preceptors. Sanskrit is one of the oldest languages in India. A lot of the Buddhist texts are written in Sanskrit as well as Pali. And so the thing about these names is, when we give them in Sanskrit, you're not going to know what they mean, right? Because of a different language. So we are going to give that. We're going to call each preceptor up by their street name, their secular name. Thank you, Changosu, for giving us that term. Call them up here by their street name, and one at a time. And then Shinkyu is we're going to provide them with their Dharma name. So we'll say that to them in Sanskrit. And then he's also going to tell them what that means in English. And these are basically, when we talk about the temple, we talk about each name having three main names or three meanings. It has its meaning, just a transcribed meaning, what it is. It has the meaning that the person takes it to be initially, this is my name. Let's say, for example, my name is Kunga Nyima. And so that's a Tibetan name because I was studying in a Tibetan tradition when I got that name. And that means all joy sun. So that's the first meaning, just all joy sun. The second meaning is, how do I interpret that? What does that mean? Originally that made me think of, it just maybe reflected some of my personality, that I was a kind of a person that kind of very optimistic and got a lot of joy out of life. And then the third meaning is this sort of secret meaning or hidden meaning, which you kind of discover through your name, through practice, and I think that what I've maybe discovered is a real desire to maybe share my joy with others. And so the name is all joy sun. So sun is radiating. So this idea is of radiating or bringing that out to others as much as I can, considering I'm an introverted person, it's a struggle, but I try my best. So that's what we're asking the preceptors to do too, right? We're going to give them this name and we're going to ask them to aspire to to live it out as they can and kind of discover deeper meanings as they go. So as part of this process, each preceptor will stand up. We were going to give them a, sorry, darn, give these to you to give the Sanshin. So Sanshin is going to place a stole on each of the preceptors. This represents a blessing from us as a representative of the teachings of Buddhism, basically a blessing of the teacher. You know, just our blessing for them participating in the program and good wishes for them to continue on. And they can take that home and put it on their altar as a reminder of all their good hard work that they put in. The other thing we're going to do here when their Dharma name is announced is we're going to give them a mala beads. And so these are mala beads. And you can use these in recitations. If you're doing a certain number of recitation or mantras or prayers, you know, you keep track of your prayers with that. We haven't talked about these a lot with the preceptors, but I'll send you out some information that help you with that. And some people like to just wear their malas as a reminder of their religious path, you know, their spiritual path. They can look at that and they remind them how to be mindful in the moment or how to be skillful, that kind of thing. And then when Shinkyu reads the actual Dharma name during that process, Sanshin and Gajisu are going to be putting a thread around their wrist. And it'll be looped around 3 times for the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And it's going to be tied on there so it doesn't really come off. And the idea is just this is another visual reminder you're going to have with you. Every time you look at your arm there, you'll be reminded of this saffron color, you know, which is the original color of the Buddha, and just remind you to think about your practice. Be mindful in your everyday lives. Okay, so yeah. Let me give you. A little crowded up here, so we're going to try and orchestrate this. When the preceptor first stand up over here by
All right, so the first person we'll call up is Alex. And the Dharma name, you got that? Thank you. Dharma name we've chosen for you is Dve Satya, which is 2 truth. So Dve is 2, and Satya is truth, reality, or things as they are. Together, Dve Satya is 2 truth. It's important to note that 2 truths, plural, would be Dve Satya. So it's Satya versus Satya. So it's a small difference. Traditionally, the 2 truth doctrine speaks about the non-duality of form and emptiness, the relative and the absolute. But for you, Dve Satya, your Dharma name speaks to both duality, Dve, and non-duality, Satya, of the 2 great religious traditions that are alive in your practice, Buddhism and Christianity. May they continue to work together as one through you.
You can have a seat.
Next, we will call up Kiara, whose name is Prabhava Pratyagama. Prabhava Pratyagama, which means returning to the source. Prabhava means source, origin, or a cause of existence. Pratyamaga means returning. Prabhava also has another meaning, which is the power of one's knowledge, specifically the knowledge of identifying skillful and unskillful karma, which are acts of body, speech, and mind. You see what's unskillful and avoid it, and you see what's skillful and you follow it. That's the source of your power. Next, we call up Evan, whose Dharma name is Bhadra Jati, which means fortunate birth. Bhadra means good, auspicious, fortunate. Jati means birth or rebirth in the sense of being born or reborn into this world physically, but also of the continually renewing contents of the mind, which is chitta. This life is good, auspicious, and fortunate, but so too is our moment-by-moment rebirth as our no selves. Through mindful practice, we cause our innate goodness to manifest in this life through our very act of living it.
And one thing I wanted to add that, so we asked the preceptors to also identify a group name. So this would be something that everyone in the preceptor would share as well. So everyone includes the name Karuna as part of their name, like their last name.
Yeah, karuna, compassion is the desire to remove suffering and harm from all beings. It's the feeling that spurs us towards and along the bodhisattva path. Next, we have Pamela, whose Dharma name is Antar Bhava, which is interbeing. Antar is inter and Bhava is being. But Bhava can also mean worldly existence, birth, production, origin, as well as habitual and emotional tendencies, which is a lot. So Antar Bhava means interbeing, which really is the entirety of who and what we are or aren't, indistinguishable from the entirety of the world, of the universe. The universe and you bloom together, manifest together. As you embody this, your practice is right here. So we have Antar Bhava Karuna. Next, we have Angel, whose Dharma name is Kashanti Bhava, which means becoming patience. So Kashanti Bhava Karuna, becoming patience, compassion. Bhava is becoming, but also means, well, once again, worldly existence, being, birth, production, origin, and also habitual and emotional tendencies. So it's the sum total of this very life of ours. Kashanti is patience, forbearance, forgiveness, and tolerance. Most importantly, it's one of the paramitas or the perfections. So Kashanti Bhava is the active practice of patience, forgiveness, and all that rest. It's standing tall in the face of adversity and picking ourselves and others up after we fall. Next, we have Max, whose Dharma name is Sadhu Rupo Buddhasya Karuna, which is a true elder of the Buddha, compassion. Sadhu Rupo is a true elder, a venerable one, a wise man, specifically one who is knowledgeable in the teachings of the Buddha. Buddhasya means of the Buddha. Together, Sadhu Rupa Buddhasya is an elder of the Sangha who uses the contents of their own life with all of its ups and downs to study, practice, embody, and demonstrate the Dharma for others as well as for themselves. He has a true fearlessness of practice that we read about in the Heart Sutra that marks him out as a true elder of the Buddha. Next, we have Emily, whose Dharma name is Sati Pratyamaga Karuna, which is returning to mindfulness, compassion. Sati is mindfulness or memory. It's remembering to bring our awareness back to the body-mind right here in this very moment. Pratyamaga is returning. So Sati Pratyamaga means returning to mindfulness or something like returning to remembrance. This is returning continually to the present moment where we study the body-mind and its habitual tendencies, and we remember that we are impermanent, empty, and not self, which means that we are truly free of karmic defilements, free of unskilled actions. We are calm and clear. Finally, we have Jennifer, whose Dharma name is Sunyagaram Pravesha Karuna, which is entering the empty house, compassion. So Sunyagaram is empty house or empty place. In one sense, it's a place that's good for meditation. In another, it's right where you are, everywhere. Pravesha is entering. So Sunyagaram Pravesha is entering the empty house, which is done with every step and with every breath. It's the life that's practice itself.
So this is what the certificate looks like. It's got their street name, their Dharma name, and the simple version of their Dharma name's meaning on there. Okay, and then the stamp here is the stamp of the temple, the Grand Rapids Buddhist Temple, and it's Korean script, and it says Grand Rapids Zen Center in Korean. I understand. The wheel here at the top is the Dharma wheel. So it's the Eightfold Path. So there's the fourth noble truth is the Eightfold Path: right view, right intent, right livelihood, right action, right speech, right concentration, right mindfulness. All those things are included in the Eightfold Path. I think what we're going to do is go ahead and have everybody stand up, and we're going to do our closing gathas. After our closing gathas, I would like to have all the preceptors stay up here, and we're going to do some group pictures before you go downstairs. We are having a potluck downstairs, so anybody who would like to join us to celebrate their preceptors receiving their precepts, please join us downstairs. Glad to have you. It doesn't matter if you didn't bring anything or not. Please just join us, help us celebrate. Thank you.
For for all unskillful action ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thoughts. Now I atone for them all. Vast is the robe of compassion, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Buddha's teachings for the benefit of all sentient beings. All beings, one body, I vow to liberate. Endless blind passion, I vow to uproot. Dharma gates without number, I vow to penetrate. The great way of Buddha, I vow to attain.
And traditionally, we'll have the right side face toward the center, the left side face toward the center. And we can all recite the 5 contemplations together. This
is the gift of the whole universe, the earth, the sky, and much hard work. May we eat in mindfulness so as to be worthy to receive it. May we transform our unskillful states of mind and learn to eat with moderation. May we take only foods that nourish us and prevent illness. We accept this food to realize the path of understanding and love. Thank you, everyone.
The preceptors should stay up here. We'll take some pictures. And usually what we'll do is we'll take like a picture with your certificates, and then we'll take a picture without your certificate.